The night carried the weight of betrayal. The barn doors groaned against the wind as lantern light flickered across splintered beams. Dust hung in the air, thick as smoke, clinging to the skin of a young woman whose voice cut through the silence. "You dared to cross me!" she screamed, her eyes burning with both terror and fury. The outlaw's hand moved quick as a whip. A slap cracked across her cheek, snapping her head to the side. She staggered, her lip bleeding, but her spirit refused to bend. He grinned, yellow teeth flashing in the dim glow. "You'll learn your place," he spat, seizing her arm and dragging her deeper into the shadows. Her nails scraped against the dirt floor, her boots catching on hay and rope. She fought, gasping, "I'm not yours to break." The outlaw snarled, ripping a cloth from her grasp, a faded scrap of her mother's shawl, the last memory she owned. He held it high over the lantern flame. For a moment, fire painted his face in devil's red. Then the cloth caught, curling black, ash drifting into the stale barn air. The girl let out a strangled cry, watching her hope burn to nothing. From beyond the stable door, a shadow lingered. The rancher, his shoulders heavy with years of toil, his jaw set like iron. He said nothing, only watched, boots rooted in dust, fists clenched against the railing. His eyes carried sorrow, but beneath it smoldered a quiet rage. The outlaw laughed, shoving the girl into the dirt. "No one will save you. Not out here. Not ever." Her body trembled, but her voice rose again, raw and defiant. "I'll never bow to you." The barn filled with silence, broken only by the hiss of burning cloth and the restless snort of horses. Outside, the wind moaned across the plains, carrying the echo of a promise yet unspoken. The rancher turned away into the night, spurs whispering against the earth. He could not intervene, not yet, but the eye, mage of the girl's broken face, and the flames devouring her last keepsake carved themselves deep into his soul. And in that silence the West held its breath, knowing this betrayal would not go unanswered. The desert stretched endless, a graveyard of stone and silence. Dawn's first light spilled over jagged ridges, casting long shadows across the sand. The outlaw rode slow, a cruel smirk etched into his face, reins clenched in one hand, the young woman's wrists bound in the other. Her arms ached as rope cut into skin. Each stumble dragged her knees raw against gravel. Dust filled her mouth, her lungs fighting for air. Still, she refused to beg. "Keep up," he barked, yanking the rope tighter, "or the buzzards will have their feast sooner." She stumbled again, hitting the ground with a sharp cry. The outlaw tugged hard, dragging her along the dry earth. Stones tore at her dress, skin scraped raw, but her eyes never left the horizon. Somewhere beyond the heat, she believed, freedom still waited. The sun climbed higher. Heat pressed down like a hammer. Sweat and blood streaked her face. The outlaw dismounted, crouching close, his breath reeking of whiskey. "No one's comin' for you," he hissed. "Not your kin, not the law, and sure as hell not that old rancher. You're mine to leave." He shoved her toward the ravine, its cracked earth yawning wide like an open grave. She landed hard, dust rising in a choking cloud. Her lips trembled, whispering to herself, "Not here. Not like this." The outlaw spat into the dirt, mounted his horse, and turned away. His laughter echoed against the canyon walls, fading as hooves pounded into the distance. Silence swallowed her. Only the wind remained, carrying the cries of circling vultures above. She tried to crawl, nails clawing at dry soil, but her strength gave way. Her body collapsed, chest heaving in shallow gasps. Narration lingered over the moment, heavy and unforgiving. Each breath was borrowed, each heartbeat stolen by the cruel sun. Her vision blurred. She saw the sky, pale and merciless, and thought of the cloth that had burned, the mother she had lost, and the life denied to her. A single tear cut through the dust on her cheek. And then, stillness. She lay half-buried in shadow, abandoned to the desert, with only the echo of her defiance left to fight the silence. The rancher rode through the dawn-lit plain, spurs whispering against the dry earth, his eyes, sharp beneath the brim of his hat, scanned the horizon with a predator's patience. Dust swirled around his boots as he dismounted, the wind tugging at his coat like it knew something dark had passed this way. Near the ravine he saw her, half collapsed in the dirt, body trembling, lips cracked and dry. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion and pain mingling with stubborn defiance. She tried to lift her head, but it fell heavy to the sand. "Hey, stay with me," the rancher said, voice low but firm. His hands, calloused yet careful, lifted her under the arms. The world smelled of earth and sweat, of sun-baked wood and the faint copper tang of blood. Her weak voice broke the silence. Why save me?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her, noting every bruise, every scratch, the dirt clinging to her torn dress. Finally, he said, "Because no one deserves to be left for the buzzards." Gently, he hoisted her onto the horse. Her arms clung to him instinctively, a mix of fear and trust. The ride back was slow, each hoofbeat a rhythm against her ragged pulse. Dust rose like ghosts in the morning light, and the horizon glowed with promise, though she could barely see it through swollen eyes. At the cabin, he laid her on a rough-hewn bed. Lanterns flickered, casting warm golden light against the wooden walls. Fire crackled in the hearth, smoke curling into the rafters. For the first time in hours, she felt the weight of terror ease slightly, replaced by the tentative stirrings of hope. He brought water in a tin cup, letting it drip slowly to her cracked lips. She drank, trembling, and whispered, I thought I was gone." "You're not," he replied, voice firm but soft. "Not yet, and not while I'm here." Her eyes scanned the cabin, stacked wood, a rifle on the wall, leather boots worn smooth by years of labor. This place was sanctuary, rough but alive with the promise of safety. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of the ranch in the rising sun. Inside, the young woman clutched the blanket the rancher had laid over her shoulders. Dust still lingered on her skin, but the firelight danced in her eyes. For the first time since the barn, she felt the faint pulse of something she thought she had lost. Hope. And in that quiet, fragile moment, the West seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. The sun had barely risen when the outlaw's shadow appeared on the ridge above the ranch. Word of the girl's survival had reached him, carried on the wind like a curse. His eyes, cold and narrow, scanned the cabin below where the rancher moved with quiet precision, stacking firewood, checking the fences, every motion deliberate. "She thinks she's safe," the outlaw muttered to himself, a bitter laugh curling from his throat. "We'll see about that." Inside, the young woman stirred, arms wrapped tightly around her knees. She peeked toward the window, catching the flicker of movement in the distance. Her heart pounded, a drum of fear and defiance. "They're coming," she whispered. The rancher's gaze met hers, steady and unwavering. "Not today," he said, voice low. "If they step foot here, they'll regret it." The outlaw spurred his horse, riding closer to the cabin, fists clenched. He shouted threats, the sound slicing through the morning calm. "You think you can hide her? She's mine to break, too." The girl's breath caught, but she stood taller, shoulders squared. "She's not yours," she yelled back, voice sharp and raw. The rancher stepped onto the porch, shotgun in hand. The barrel glinted in the sunlight, a warning etched in steel. His stance was calm, controlled, a wall of resolve against the chaos approaching. "Back off," he said, tone clipped. "One step closer, and it won't be just words you regret." The outlaw halted, eyes blazing with fury, scanning the rancher, the girl, the wooden fence that marked this boundary of safety. His jaw clenched, spit flecking his lips. Then, with a curse, he backed away, mounting his horse. His gang, hidden in the tree line, muttered their discontent, uneasy under the rancher's gaze. As the outlaw's horse hooves faded into the distance, the girl exhaled, her knees finally uncoiling. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the rapid drum of her heart slow. The rancher turned back to the cabin, checking the locks, the windows, the fires. Outside, the wind carried the scent of dust and sun-baked wood, mingled with the faint smoke of the distant horizon. For a fleeting moment, hope felt tangible. The threat had not vanished, but retreat had bought them time, a chance to breathe, to heal, and to prepare. The west was harsh, and danger never slept, but within the walls of the ranch, the young woman felt something she hadn't dared in days, a fragile, flickering sense that perhaps she could survive. The morning light stretched across the town like a slow, cautious promise. Dust rose from the dirt streets as the sheriff rode in, badge gleaming faintly under the sun, boots thudding against the stirrups. His face was lined, eyes tired but sharp, carrying the weight of years spent chasing outlaws and witnessing the worst of human cruelty. The rancher met him at the edge of the property, hands gripping the brim of his hat. "She's still in danger," he said, voice low. "That man, he won't stop." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "I've heard whispers," he replied, voice calm but heavy with authority. "But his family runs half this county. Proof won't be easy." The young woman, sitting on a bench by the cabin, wiped dust and sweat from her face. Her hands trembled slightly, but her gaze was steady. She spoke softly, but her words cut through the air like a blade. "If the law won't protect me, who will?" The rancher turned to her, expression hard but protective. "I'll be here. I'll keep you safe." The sheriff studied her, measuring her strength, the fire still burning in her eyes despite everything. He nodded slowly, a flicker of respect in his gaze. "We'll watch, but be ready. The West doesn't wait for courage. It tests it." Inside, the cabin smelled of pine smoke and fresh water. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting long, golden shadows across the walls. The young woman traced her fingers over the burnt remnants of her mother's cloth, now stored carefully in a small box. Each scar, each bruise, a testament to survival. The rancher stood near the doorway, rifle resting lightly against his shoulder, ears tuned to every creak, every whisper of the wind. Outside, the horizon stretched wide and indifferent, carrying with it the distant sounds of horses, cattle, and the faint murmur of the town waking. Dialogue hung in the air, sharp and succinct. "I won't run again," she said. "You won't have to," he replied. The sheriff, adjusting his hat, turned back toward the street. "Keep your heads clear. Trouble comes for those who wait." As he rode off, the rancher and the young woman exchanged a glance, a silent understanding that danger was far from over, but for the first time they had an ally with authority. The West remained brutal and unyielding, yet for the first time since the barn, hope had a foothold, fragile but alive, like the wind rustling through the prairie grass. Night draped the ranch in shadow, a velvet darkness pierced only by the glow of the cabin's lanterns and the flicker of distant torches. The wind carried whispers of the outlaws plotting. A gang gathered in the hills, drunk on whiskey and vengeance. Hooves thudded against dirt paths, low murmurs of curses riding the breeze. Inside, the young woman moved quietly, checking doors and windows, her hands trembling slightly but steady. Every shadow seemed alive, every crack of wood against the wind a potential threat. The rancher loaded his rifle with meticulous care, the metallic click echoing softly in the quiet cabin. "They're coming," she whispered, eyes wide. He nodded, voice firm, low enough that it barely disturbed the night. "Then we make sure they don't leave alive." Outside, the gang crested the ridge, torches held high. Their shouts shattered the stillness. "We'll take her back. No one stops us." The rancher moved to the doorway, shotgun resting in his hands. Lantern light caught the barrel, glinting like a warning in the darkness. His eyes scanned the approaching figures, measuring distance, wind, and the odds. The young woman clutched a revolver, hands tight around cold metal, knuckles white. Her breath came in shallow bursts, fear and determination colliding. "I'm not afraid," she said, though her voice trembled. The gang advanced, splintering the fence, their boots stirring the dry dust. One swung a torch, fire catching on the dry grass. Sparks danced like malevolent fireflies across the prairie. The rancher's voice rang out, low and commanding. "Back, now!" The outlaw at their front, furious and unhinged, snarled, "You think that'll stop us?" He charged, dragging the girl's fear with him. But the rancher's aim was steady. A warning shot cracked the night, splintering wood at the gang's feet. Shouts turned to curses and cries. The young woman gripping her, revolver tighter, fired once, not at them, but as a warning, the bullet cutting the air with deadly intent. Sparks of courage ignited within her, the first flames of defiance. The night held them in tense standoff. Shadows against lantern light, fire against wood, fear against determination. Every heartbeat echoed in the silence between the shouts. And in that charged moment, the rancher and the girl stood united, a wall of resolve against the approaching chaos. The night had come to test them, and for the first time, they were ready to fight back.